what we're seeing with respect to the Ted Dizzuti case is that because the woke elements cannot accept critical positions of their ideas, they are going to result to these dictatorial tactics where they just prevent people from speaking. The worst thing is what we've seen happen to Ted, which was he lost his job. His union, which should have been defending him, should have been defending his ability as a citizen. Not to be talking about it on the job and so on, which is his professional things, but he's just doing it as a private citizen. He's pushed out of his job, and that's a very serious penalty for people, to lose their jobs, but at least you're still here, and he's still here. So you can keep on going, but then the next step is going to be putting people in jail. That's going to be the next step, and then you have circumstances in extreme totalitarian regimes where people are disappeared, where you actually have you're basically assassinated in various ways. Now, people say, "Oh no, like this is Canada," but totalitarianism. What are regimes like in their pre-totalitarian phases? And I think that you can look at countries like Nazi Germany, and you can see there was not always Nazi Germany. There was a precursor to that. And what happened is that they removed people from the universities. They clamped down on the ability of people to say things in the public square. And then this allowed for these, the autocratic processes to take root in the institutions. So I know some people think, Powell River, there's a name, it's kind of this sort of a bit obscure, like what's the big deal? It doesn't really matter very much. It matters a lot. It matters a lot because it's important to the people of Powell River who should be able to decide democratically what their town should be called. So that's sort of on it seems to me to be, it's self-evident that you should be able to decide what your name is going to be. But secondly, Powell River is a symbol of what's happening. And as Ted was saying, when he was interacting with people who contacted him who are going through all of this, now, if we do not hold the line in Powell River, it's over. So we need to fight hard and fight now before the whole democratic processes that we are so used to and have taken for granted are destroyed by this totalitarian impulse, which is spreading across British Columbia and even is spreading across the entire country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francis. That was great. So, does anybody have any questions? Would anybody like to come up here and ask a question? Eva?
I don't want to come up there. I have a question for Kelly Gallagher.
No.
Where did you get the facts that 6 million Indigenous Canadians were murdered?
It's just the history of the Indigenous population.
It is.
It's Canadians, it's North America.
You need a lesson.
There was a genocide.
Okay, I was just asking.
That's a whole one.
Also, I got a book for you. Anyways, Francis, I'd also like to ask you. So Kamloops now, they started with 215 bodies, reduced to 200. And then most recently, children and bodies and graves is out of the thing. It's the anomalies, right? Anomalies. Well, everyone sees that big billboard down on the town site on the old hospital site. And it really annoys me. Because it says there's 10,068 Kais matter, Kais remember. And it's so infuriating. It's what do I tell my grandchildren when they ask me what's that sign, and I have to say it's bullshit. That's how I feel. So
the truth will set you free. Yes.
I hope so. Thank you, Francis, for coming, and thank you, gentlemen, and
Here we go.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing your perspective with us. I actually assisted the Polish government as it moved away from communism. And I remember the excitement at people that they could talk to each other and they could listen to rock and roll music without fear that they were going to get imprisoned for it. And so I've been told that I always have to wear my mayor hat. So I'll just repeat what I said after I was severely criticized for accepting a copy of Grave Air. And I said, you know, I've been an academic. I believe it's important that you look at various information sources and then you make a decision. So I'd like to thank you very much for reminding us all that we live in a democracy, and in a democracy we have the right to seek out information, form our opinion, and then hopefully there'll be a format that we can share that opinion in a very collegial way. So thank you very much.
You know, that's, oh, we got another question? Oh, here we go.
I don't have a question, except about inclusiveness. And I'm going to say, the victim of that as well. I'm relatively new to Powell River. And in that time, I'm Kathy Koralik. I've had, through my life, I've had lots of experience on boards and whatnot. However, I was denied the opportunity to sit on a board because I did not support the name change. And then nobody asked me that question. It was a rumor that they had heard. And because I did not support it, they never asked. They said, you're not welcome on our board. So that happened to me, and I've only been here really permanently for 2 years. So what does that say about this kind of community? I love it here. I think it's great. And I'm really pleased. And I'm going to run for council too. That's what
Well, since we're on that subject, I'm gonna run for council too. Enough is enough, and you know, you gotta get things done.
Election?
Hey?
Can we have an early election?
Anybody else have any questions? Come on, Pat, I know you got some questions.
Diane, I just want to let you know that I called the Peak today and asked them if there would be something from the Peak. This is our newspaper. And I know that they did one for Sean Carlton. They put an opinion piece in there, an opinion letter with links to everything that he, you know, talks about. And I was asking if they would do the same for us. Gonna check with the
Big
publisher.
surprise they're not here, right?
Gonna check with the publisher,
Yeah,
and
big surprise.
they'll get back to us on that. So, but we do live in, just to say, we do live in fear. The Peak lives in fear. They may want to print it, but they can't print it.
And so that's I've talked, I sent a press release to Galinsky. So I sent out a press release.
I'm sure the Peak would love to print about that.
Kelly Gallagher is we're battling and not obeying the rules, just like city council would remove don't let the door hang on the way out.
So Francis, I talked about the Peak, but I know you've got a lot to say about the media.
Yes, I do.
So go ahead.
Okay, so the Peak is important because I was trying to, interact with the Peak, and I'd be happy to do an interview with them, talk to them. I'm sure as well Ted and Art would be happy to talk to them. And it's only fair, since John Carlton got such the Uber clown, got such a, a welcome endorsement, that we should be able to have critical views as well being expressed. And so, but that's a big problem with wokeism. So I'm not sure if people have heard this interview. Jordan Tucker. Have you heard the interview with Jordan Tucker?
Oh, yeah.
So if you just Google Jordan Tucker, and maybe Widdowson and Jordan Tucker, you will get to hear 26 minutes of hyper wokeism. Jordan Tucker, she's a CBC journalist, or she does stories for the CBC, and I never participated in an interview like that, and I don't think, although she's a bit extreme, I don't think it's all that unusual. This kind of, and it's continuing with the spreading of what appears to be now disinformation about the 215 bodies of children in the Kamloops Indian Residential School. Like that has not really been given very much airtime, the critical analysis of that claim. And if you notice about grave error,
I feel uncomfortable. There's been people videotaping this the whole time, and now they're facing us and videotaping us. So my question is, who are they, what are they doing, and how do they have the right to videotape us as an audience member?
it's a public space, and so everyone who is here is in a public space. So, that's just the way it is, and we're not in a private gathering, and it's for transparency too. For people who don't want to be known that you're here, it's gonna be, if you're gonna be punished for it, which you might be, that is the nature of the society. But I would encourage people to say, courage begets courage, cowardice begets cowardice. If you are courageous, people will stand behind you.
Honey badger.
Honey badger. So, and this is funny, Gad Sad, I'm not sure if people follow Gad Sad. He's I know, well, not a friend, I've met him a couple times. Anyway, he's got this great kind of image that you can cultivate with yourself, which is the honey badger. And the honey badger is special as an animal because it's known for its toughness. It's not very large, and it's like, it could be easily killed by a lion or something like that. But because it has loose skin around its neck, it can, when it's attacked, can turn defense into offense. So no bigger animal wants to have anything to do with the honey badger. There's plenty other animals to go after and not have the honey badger really going after you. So when you are feeling that you are under attack, think honey badger. Time to go after. Yes. Yes.
Hello, my name's Lorraine Hansen. I was born and raised in Powell River, and I'll be 85 in October. We lived next door to the Vizzutis in Riverside, his father. And my mother was Italian also, and I never found out till I was 50 years old that my father was Métis. My grandmother was born in Grafton, North Dakota. She was a Chippewa. And so I wasn't raised in the indigenous culture at all. Do you want to know why I'm wearing this sweater today? Because I have a tattoo on my arm honoring my grandmother, our feathers, and I knew I had to cover it up today. No, I just was uncomfortable if I did not cover it up.
What's on you?
I know it's on me, but I was not raised in. I'm actually in between two worlds right now. And my friend Louise told me we are innocents of the past, and I believe we are. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay, I wasn't sure, sorry.
If you do not want the name change, you're kind of put in a category that says old white people, who don't know anything. And it is, And there's a kind of an idea to dismiss this small group of people. It's not small, it is kind of white, but it's not small. It's a really big group. And my question maybe to Francis even is, how does a group organize itself? Obviously we have a lot of people here and there's a lot more in the community who are afraid to speak. How do we change that? How do we get from being this small little group of old-fashioned people who don't know anything and being dismissed to being a vital group that really has the power to say something and is going to say it? So how do we do that? I mean, it's an easy question, I know, but.
Organization. That's the only way to do it. So what happens often is activists, woke activists are very organized. And people who have just been used to things working over the last whatever, they're comfortable and they're not used to this. So there's a few I guess I have three things that I would encourage. The first one is toughen up, right? So someone calls you a residential school denialist or whatever, just say, I'm gonna own it. Like, I am a residential school denialist.
I'm a grave denier.
I deny that the residential schools were genocidal. There's no evidence for that. There's a made-up word called cultural genocide. So that's the first thing. Like, you gotta be tough, and if you don't respect, like Kelly Gallagher, I don't care what she has to say at all. Sean Carlton, I don't care, because I don't respect them. I have no respect for them. If someone who I do respect is angry at me and so on, then I'm gonna worry about that. So, and social media is the worst, sort of thing for this, is because you're dealing with all these people who are just strangers, so why get upset about this? And if you do get upset about that, don't go in there, because it's gonna have a lot of that. So, for instance, you need to be tough, you need to, and you can admit mistakes, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I got a bit too feisty there, like, because I got all, and I should have just done the Ted Pizzuti thing here. Ted just hung back and calm things down, not get all like, but I got all feisty. So I have a tendency, and that's a fault of mine. I totally accept that. But I have that as part of because I have to have the energy to go forward. So that's the first thing, is that, but you gotta be tough, and you gotta stand your ground, and secondly, you gotta be principled. So that was a kind of a difficult thing with Kelly Gallagher there. Because my impulse there was she's wants to talk, and so I don't want to shut her down, but she's behaving in an abominable manner. And so if I'm going to do that, then I'm rewarding her bad behavior. And as you know, with children, if you reward bad behavior, you've got a really nasty child that you're having to deal with, who's all entitled and everything like that. So you got to be principled, but you also have to not kind of cater to things which are not helping the situation. And then the third thing is you got to be strategic. You got to think down the road and think, okay, and this is what we were sort of doing about the event today, is we had no idea what was going to happen. So you get the police on call, you do this, you're thinking through, okay, what's going to happen if this happens, and so on. So I think, but organization, you already, I have to say that I am amazed and impressed, very, very impressed with the people of Powell River. And with people like Art and Ted, especially, and Diane. Ted is really, the fact that he has been so demonized when he is obviously such a person who's working in good faith is really, really upsetting. And I want to find out about his union, because I am saying that union is just a disgrace. And working people, if that defends you, it's what's called a company union. I'm not sure if you've heard of a company union. A company union is a union that defends the owners. It manages the workers so that they don't stand up for their rights within the organization. Anyway, that's the real story behind the Ted Dizzuti case, is that a union that should have defended his freedom of expression rights as a private citizen encouraged him to take early retirement. And now this is that's really got to be exposed, what happened there. But what you need to do now is city council, you've got a great mayor. And I hope that you're praising him, because we've seen some really bad situations with mayors across the country. And you don't have to agree. Like maybe you totally disagree with grave error and what's being said in it, but you say, hey, we're a democracy. And if people want to discuss these ideas, they should be able to discuss these ideas. So now you got to get, and I believe Jim Palm is a pretty good Democratic. You got to get a slate. So you need, you have 7 council members? You need to get a slate of 5, 2, or whatever, so that you don't want to compete against each other. You run as the Democratic slate in the election. So so you all go together and you just clear out those totalitarians. Get them out of city council and get them
Thanks, Francis. Just before this question comes in, there was a question out in the crowd regarding, or a concern regarding the filming that's going on. So within us today, we do have a representative from the New Westminster Times. Him and his wife, David, Brett, and Lorraine, they are taking films, and they have been very much involved in Powell River. They are well versed on what's going on and looking up history and doing some articles for us in regards to what's been going on. I can't say enough about them. They're amazing people, and we just have to thank them for coming up. They are Now on to the next question.
Right, thanks Ted. Thank you Ted and Francis for your information, or disinformation or whatever. A couple of points. One is somebody asked about the peak. I wrote an article for the peak, intended for the peak, a couple of weeks ago, taking a somewhat different view from what the majority here is expressing about democracy and what it means. I have a different take on what democracy means. It should involve listening to each other. It should involve deliberation, not going with eyes blinkered and ears closed. And frankly, to be honest, I'm not sure that that's happening here.
Really?
Yeah, really. I think, how many people here went to any of the processes 2 years ago when the city put on? Okay, maybe 30. Okay, so that, of course, that wasn't a really deliberative process.
You guys are taking notes? Why are you guys even here?
Yeah.
It's a public
Because
event.
we want to listen to both sides, or all sides, right? So what's the problem? That is exactly the problem, isn't it? I shouldn't be here if I don't already agree with you. And it's like I've lived here for 4 years, full time basically, and it seems to me like there's really 2 cities here. I mean, you got the music. It's like there's 2 different communities that rarely interact with each other. And democracy has been defined as government by discussion. I don't think it's just going in and recording, a ballot on the basis of your pre-existing views. That's just like sort of legitimized mob rule, really. There is such a thing as minority rights, individual rights. That's what my article was about. I can post it somewhere. It's about, I think, a better version of democracy called deliberative democracy. And that means that decisions take place only after a process of discussion and looking at information from different sides. Rather than just going ahead, let's just have an election, let's have a referendum and settle the issue once and for all. That's not going to happen. These wounds are not going to heal that way. It's going to be a long-term process. My view is that if I had to make a prediction, and I studied democracy, I came from a political science background. I spent like 4 or 5 months looking at fascism and its rise, and I see some of that. It's certainly not so-called wokeism that is the prime origin, the threat of fascism now. It comes from the right more than anything. And I know many of you don't agree with that.
Bullshit.
Yeah. So anyway, the whole thing, you talk about fear, how it's not exactly easy for me to get up here because we're not in a very conducive forum. And I hope that someone like Kate, what's her name? Kate? She's working with the Westview right there. Kate Sutherland is bringing together a sort of an exercise or project to bring different sides together and listen to each other. And I don't see it.
Hold on. Do we have questions? This is what we were trying to do, is question periods here. To Francis and myself, if you have a question.
So I guess you want a question for me to Francis, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it's the last point you were making about organizing, about being courageous and so on. That works 2 ways, right? And you need conversation, you need dialogue, not just hooray for my side.
You guys shut down dialogue.
Okay.
That's
That's
right.
what you do.
Excuse me, to the man that just spoke, you have been taking notes all through this meeting. Are you going to be submitting this to the peak? Because if you are, this is going to be one-sided, just what you think, not what we all think. And if you're not in favor of Powell River being Powell River, get out.
That's why we're trying to get away.
Yeah, so sorry, who is the person that was just speaking? No, just like, I just want to respond. Sorry, what was your name, sir?
Bob.
Bob? So Bob, first of all, thank you. That's the first thing. Bob is doing, he's saying so, you know, like Kelly Gallagher, that was bad, so, okay. But Bob was, this is what we want.
It's respectful.
Right? So what we need to do now is Bob is a person who has a very, very legitimate viewpoint. And I used to do this, and this is what I tried to do at MRU before I got pushed out of there, is I used to have what was called the critical thinking series, and there's a professor by the name of Peter Boghossian who does this. And people might have watched, and actually the words for it is street epistemology, it's a fancy word for trying to understand why people believe the things that they do, right? Because what happens often in these conversations is you have a misunderstanding of what someone is arguing. And it just gets things off on the wrong foot right from the get-go. Right? So you first try to spend some time learning what someone believes, and that takes a lot of patience. And so this forum here is not really